From the combined newsrooms of KARK4 and Fox 16, breaking news coverage.
Just a few minutes ago, the U.S. Supreme Court denied all stay of execution requests for Kenneth Williams. Good evening, I'm Kevin Kelly.
And I'm Ashley Katz. We are live right now on Fox 16 and KARK. This is extended coverage of the execution of Kenneth Williams. It was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock this evening. The Supreme Court, though, have been waiting on the go-ahead. We've been waiting on them since then, and that's where we find ourselves this evening.
Yeah, we want to go live to our colleagues Bob Clausen along with Jesse Tenor live at the Cummins unit for the latest. Obviously now the wheels are in motion.
Yeah, they are, Kevin. That's right. Good evening, everybody. We're no longer waiting on word whether or not the execution will move forward. We are now waiting on word. When will the execution be carried out, and when will Kenneth Williams be pronounced dead for his crimes? A man who admitted to killing 4 people is now, we presume, Jesse, in the death chamber.
Yeah, J.R. Davis, the governor's spokesman, says that they have been starting the preparations now for him, and so that means that he's moved from that holding cell to the execution chamber. They first strap him down, and then they make sure that the IVs are in there okay, and then they kind of continue the process from there. But again, the witnesses aren't seeing any of that. And
I think too that they mentioned they might be have a lengthy, I guess you could say a speech or a dissertation. Kenneth Williams mentioned he was going to be speaking in his religious language, which is he'll be speaking in tongues, so it could take some time. He even said you're probably not even going to understand just exactly what it is I'm going to be saying, but he said it would be lengthy, so the state naturally will give him time to do that. So that's where we are at this point, guys. But it's one of those things when we talk about the condemned man and the situation he is in right now. It's a situation that I guess you could say the path began several years ago when he was first convicted and sentenced to life in prison here at Cummins. Then he escaped and then wound up killing Cecil Bourne just about 2 miles from here, and then getting into a high-speed chase with police in Missouri, and then getting into an accident, and then killing a driver vehicle up there. So it has been a long road, Jesse, to this point.
Most definitely. I mean, 17 years on death row. You just have to kind of wonder what goes through somebody's mind through that whole time. And he says that at first, when he did all of these horrible things to his 4 victims that he admitted to doing, he said that he felt nothing for his victims. He said he felt numb. You know, he never even gave it a second thought. Yep. And now, after all of this time, he said he found God about a decade ago, and since he can feel nothing but horrible remorse for them. I mean, during the clemency hearing I was at in March, he held up pictures of Nikki Hurd from her autopsy and was like, for every picture, he said, I, Kenneth Williams, did this. He would lay the picture down, pull up another one. It was heart-wrenching.
It's pretty tough stuff to handle. And I know some of the family members of at least one of his victims plans to be here tonight, Cecil Bourne. The other family members opted not to. I know that it was an interesting case with Mr. Greenwood, who was killed in Missouri. His daughter actually made it possible for Kenneth Williams' daughter to come out here and see her father just before the execution. I want to step out of the shot. This appears to be a similar van. I'm not sure if these are media witnesses or not that are returning. It doesn't look like it is at this point, but that's a similar type of van.
That would be really fast.
That would be pretty quick. But that doesn't look like that. But so this has been a situation last week or so, or at least last few days, emotionally raw for the families that were involved in this. And I guess every case is like that. None of these are the same.
Exactly. And that's what, you feel for the victims' families, of course, but then you also have to think about the inmates' families. I mean, just the story that Stephanie Sharp did yesterday, how those 2 families collided. Kenneth Williams' daughter that he hasn't seen since he's been on death row, 17 years, now has a 3-year-old, and she was able to introduce the 3-year-old to her father for the first time, and that was the same age that she was when she last saw him. Yeah. So I just, you got to feel for the inmates' family too.
There's emotion all the way around, and at this point now, we're waiting on word. The execution has run its course, and then Kenneth Williams will be the 4th person executed within the past 7 days. Originally, there were 8 that were in this block, and in 3 days or so, the drug midazolam expires. So essentially all executions in the state of Arkansas will stop at that point. And
Exactly.
then we move into uncharted territory, basically, on what we're going to do next.
Exactly. We haven't been told anything as far as that goes. You know, with these 4 inmates who executions have been stayed, we haven't heard anything on that side. So that'll be something that we'll try to update everybody with as soon as we can find that out too.
Yeah, and Kevin and Ashley, there are a number of options that other states take. For instance, Oklahoma, they manufacture their own drugs for lethal injection. So there's going to be a debate on how to move forward, without a doubt.
Yeah, and it'll also be interesting to see as we look forward in the state of Arkansas, feeding off of what you were saying, Bob, as to whether or not the state of Arkansas may or may not follow suit with Oklahoma after it had a botched execution with Clayton Lockett. They, after their investigation, said, you know what, no longer are we going to schedule a double execution on the same day. We are now going to spread them apart, and we'll only have an execution every 7 days. The state of Arkansas, as you well know,
carried one out.
Had its first double execution in several years, taking place on April 24th with Jack Jones and Marcel Williams. We know, having covered that those executions, according to state officials, went flawlessly. Those were their words. According to the governor's office, Jack Jones was executed in roughly 14 minutes from start to finish. And then Marcel Williams, after a 3-hour delay, was executed in 17 minutes. There was some controversy over that particular execution, saying, according to the attorneys, Marcel Williams' attorneys, that it took 45 minutes to place an IV line in him, and according to them, he was gulping for air. But as you know, the media witnesses who watched that execution painted a different story, including our very own Jesse Tenor.
Yeah, Jesse was there, and we have to also point out that right now our Donna Terrell is one of the media witnesses tonight, along with a reporter from the Associated Press and a reporter from the Pine Bluff Commercial. So she will be in the room with a pen and pad, taking notes, watching every step of the process through those windows. So we will be hearing from her in just a little bit. Also, we want to let you know kind of how this all came about. This was back in February when the governor had first set these dates. There were originally 8 death row inmates who were expected to die within 11 days. This is a pace that we have not seen in Arkansas since the early 1900s, and the reason given for the scheduling, that's because the supply of midazolam is set to expire at the end of the month. Then on April 17th, this was more than a week ago, Bruce Ward and Don Davis were set to be executed. They both received a temporary stay. Then 3 days later, exactly a week before now, Stacey Johnson's life was spared so lower courts could order new DNA testing. Liddell Lee, however, was executed. He became the first death row inmate to be executed in Arkansas in 17 years. Then on April 24th, the state performed its first double execution since 1999. Jack Jones was executed, as Kevin mentioned, in 14 minutes. 3 hours later, Marcel Williams took his last breath. It was about this time on Monday night. And that brings us to tonight, where there were 2 scheduled executions. We haven't seen this death row inmate's picture much, but his life was spared weeks ago. This was after the parole board recommended clemency. There were a number of factors. Kenneth Williams, though, his execution likely underway right now. We are just awaiting word from ADC, and one of the most powerful pictures, we don't get to show you a lot of pictures from behind the scenes of what happens, but one of them is the room, the media room, where Solomon Graves, a spokesperson for ADC, sits by a landline and waits for a phone to ring. Our Mitch McCoy gave us a picture of that, but really that is probably one of the most compelling pictures that we see out of these executions that have been carried out by the state this week, is that picture of him sitting by a telephone waiting for it to ring. We're waiting, the attorneys are waiting, the witnesses are waiting, the families are waiting for this sentence to be carried out.
Yeah, especially when you look at that image and everything that is behind it. All the wheels in motion. Here's the picture right there. I mean, just look from afar. The isolation there, the wondering, the waiting, the patience, all the legal ramifications that are in play, the monitoring of tweets, the monitoring of the phone, and then waiting for that one call to come in and say, everything's a go. Tell your staff to put the wheels in motion and let's get this execution started, which is in the process of taking place. And the hope is that it will run smoothly, like the other 3 executions that have taken place. But we do want to show you exactly kind of what happens when the inmates are placed in the execution chamber, and hopefully everything will run smoothly.
State's lethal injection procedure, the executioner will enter the chamber prior to the inmate's scheduled time of execution. They will inspect what's called the injection drug box, ensuring all chemicals are accounted for. The gurney will be positioned so the deputy director and executioner can directly see the inmate's face and IV infusion site. At that point, the condemned inmate will be brought and strapped down. The IV team, who are licensed and have at least 2 years' experience, then insert 2 IV bags containing normal saline. When the flow is secure and safe, the warden will give the green light. The IV team will first administer 2 syringes containing 250 milligrams of midazolam, a sedative that is supposed to make the inmate unconscious. If the inmate is not unconscious, backup syringes of midazolam and saline will be given in a secondary infusion site. There will then be a 5-minute waiting period, at which point the deputy director will confirm the inmate is in fact unconscious. Once that is determined, the second drug will be administered. 2 syringes containing 50 milligrams of vecuronium bromide, a paralytic. Then comes the third and final drug. 2 syringes of 120 milliequivalents of potassium chloride will begin to flow, ultimately causing the inmate's heart to stop.
That is, of course, if everything goes according to plan, which so far with these other executions has been the place, according to ADC officials, attorneys for the inmates painting a different story, along with media witnesses who have had the privilege of viewing this type of execution, one of them being our very own Jessie Tenor. We want to head back out to Jessie and Bob to kind of get her perspective, seeing she went through this process just a few days ago.
Yeah, and well, it's interesting. We were talking about perspective, Kevin, and the witnesses are vital because no 2 people actually see the same thing, Jesse, and that's why we have civilian volunteer witnesses, and of course media witnesses. There's personnel from ADC logging everything that happens, and that is a point of history that is then put in the books and then can be referred to. But you see things differently than other witnesses do, and then you guys kind of combine everything together. Was that your plan going in?
It was just take as many notes as possible and then we'll powwow after, because I mean you're looking between the gurney and the digital clock that's above it, and so I mean sometimes things could happen in a split second. So if you're looking at the clock, maybe he moves his fingers ever so slightly or something like that. And so if you have 3 media witnesses, all these civilian witnesses, and then a lot of times the inmates' attorneys are in there as well. Even governor's staff, I've been told, are in there at times. So
there's a lot to watch.
Exactly.
A lot to watch for. What's it? And you've got to ask the question. You know, aside from being a reporter, you know, you're in that situation. What's it like to witness thing as a reporter? But what's it like to watch it as a person?
To watch it as a person was difficult, and I felt like a heaviness walking into the execution chamber where we were supposed to sit. It was a very grave feeling, and I think a lot of people felt the same way because there was 4 windows, and then they were covered by this black curtain, and you knew on the other side that's where the inmate was, and you could see everyone's reflections on the windows, and everybody had the same face, very serious face. And it was really interesting too because here we are peering at him, his last moments, but he can't see into the window and see us. His head was strapped down, but it turned it ever so slightly. He just can't see through the windows anyway. And it just got to that point where we were in there waiting for a long time, and I think that's when it started getting to me. So I told myself, you know what, you're not here as a human, you're here as a journalist, and it's your responsibility, it's your role to do it. And so that ultimately to take over the human instinct, and that's what made me write all those notes and everything.
It's an important part of the job, and then record it for history because so many eyes have been on these executions, you know, around the world, Kevin and Ashley, for a number of reasons. One, because of the argument that's been in play that's actually held these executions up on whether or not this is cruel and inhumane punishment. Then, of course, the effectiveness of the drug that's being used, midazolam. Then, of course, you know, whether or not what's happening is the correct process that should be employed. So a number of reasons the witnesses are there. It's not just because get the opportunity to see something like this happen. It's the opportunity to record this for history and also record it for further use should executions like this continue. No reason to believe that they won't, but just when in the state of Arkansas is the big question, guys.
Yeah, and I want to kind of follow up on what both you and Jesse were talking about, and a question for Jesse, seeing she was a witness. In terms of, Bob, you had mentioned that the Arkansas Department of Correction, the officials there who were watching the executions, log all of this information. But one of the controversial topics that came back after these executions was that witnesses, including the media, didn't really have any indication or knowledge as to when the second or third drugs were being administered. Was that the case for you, Jesse?
Yeah, it was, Kevin. I'm going to touch on that in a second, but I wanted to read you a tweet that we just got from Mitch McCoy. He's inside the media room. He says that the lethal injection process has actually not come yet. The ADC spokesperson Solomon Graves did say that there's no delay. They're just still preparing. And so even though we've been talking about who knows, he could be giving his last words right now, we now know for a fact that he has not. So thanks for that update, Mitch. But going back to what you asked, Kevin, I mean, it's just a process that you constantly have to pay attention to, because you were talking earlier too that, I mean, we can't hear the entire process that goes on. They shut off the microphone after the inmate gives his or her last words, and so I think that might be something to also be talked about as well.
That, you know, because we talked about, and that kind of handicaps you as a witness, because although you can see something, you can't actually hear what's going on. And then there was some concerns that saying that, well, during one of the executions that the inmate was gasping for air. Other people said, no, he was just mouthing something. Well, we couldn't hear just exactly what was happening, so you couldn't definitively say it was one or the other.
Exactly, and there's really no play-by-play either, Kevin, to reiterate a little bit what you said. So it's not like the man in there watching over the inmate with his headset on is telling us, okay, now we're, administering the second dose of midazolam. Now we're doing this now. And I'm pretty sure that's out of just respect, too, for the inmate to just let it carry on as the process is supposed to. But since we don't have that, and since we wouldn't be able to hear it anyway if he was saying something, we just have to keep that keen eye on him and just follow our instincts, be watching. I mean, when I was watching the Marcel Williams one, at first when they administered the first dose of midazolam, his chest was rising really quickly up and down, but then eventually you see it slow, and then you see it not move anymore, and so then you can kind of make an assumption that that's when the second drug had been administered, because then his lungs had stopped.
And some had said, well, it appeared that he was gasping for air, but it was just, well, it was that drug taking effect, slowing him down. Or so it's like I mentioned, everyone sees something different and everyone puts a different name to it. That's why the witnesses are so important, because then all the information comes together, and then that paints the picture of what happened, I guess, in the eyes of those who aren't accustomed to seeing something like this. Of course, the folks with the Arkansas Department of Correction are trained at this. They know what to expect. So they've got a different set of eyes on it. But again, everything that they do is completely logged out as well, blow by blow.
Exactly. But I think, again, it's just important to say, I mean, somebody's gasping for breath could be my chest moving up and down.
Sure.
So it's just important that you say in an accurate way what you're seeing. And again, I mean, it's hard to say for me that he was gasping for breath when we can't hear, because gasping for breath could also look very different on a number of people, especially since he was 400 pounds.
And turning the microphone off after the final words, not something that's new. It's something that's been done ever since they've been doing this form of execution. So will it be different in the future? I think so. I think there's been enough discussion, at least. I'm not going to say yes, I think they're going to change it, but I can say there'll be some probably discussion about it, whether or not they should change it, and moving forward, perhaps that'll be.
And it's not like other states haven't followed suit. I know Oklahoma, we've heard from another Associated Press reporter that's now sat in on 13 executions, most of those being in Oklahoma, and he said that you actually listen the entire time. So
that could be a change in protocol here. At this point, though, as mentioned, the tweet we got from Mitch that at least a few minutes ago, the lethal injection has not begun. They're still prepping, which is a number of things they do. I guess they move the inmate from the cell that he's in. They've got to make sure that the areas are clean. That's all just medical procedure moves forward, and then they insert the IVs, generally one in each arm. You saw Marcel Williams, he had one in his wrist and his elbow. It took a while for them to find a vein.
Yeah, it ended up taking about 40 minutes, and we didn't really realize how long it had taken because we didn't have that digital clock yet since the curtains were still closed. But once we got that ADC log the next day, it kind of made sense why we had waited so long, because we were just wondering what was happening. And so the same thing could kind of be happening right now. They could be just trying a couple different things, or who knows at this point, really.
Everything's ready. So guys, that's where we are right now. We're moving forward, yet slowly. at this point.
All right. Thank you very much, Bob and Jesse. Appreciate it. Some interesting points that they were making, because I know in the state of Texas, they keep the microphones open for the executions. And Jesse was saying in Oklahoma they do that too. It will be interesting to see what, if any, changes are going to be made to the state of Arkansas as we move forward. But we'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
That's right, and that could even be a long road before we see
Very much so. Very
the
much so.
next death by lethal injection in the state, at least because the drugs are expiring, at least one of them. And it has been a long road to just get to this point when it comes to Kenneth Williams and his background. He has a lengthy criminal history. It goes all the way back to his childhood, and Jessie was at each and every one of the clemency hearings, and so she takes a deeper look into Williams' history.
My life as an adult has now been defined when Daddy was alive and after Daddy died.
In October 1999, Cecil Bourne was shot multiple times at his home. 19-year-old Kenneth Williams pulled the trigger after escaping from the Cummins unit.
Kenneth Williams showed no remorse for the things he did to my father.
Williams then took off to Missouri in Bourne's truck, where he killed another man in a traffic accident. Their deaths 3 weeks after Williams received a life sentence for murdering UAPB cheerleader Dominique Nikki Hurd in 1998.
So many times we focus on those people and what their rights are and what they want and what they need. I don't care what he wants or needs anymore.
He was sentenced to death in 2000 for ending Bourne's life. While behind bars, Williams claimed to have killed a fourth person. The same day, he killed Nikki Hurd.
The prison was unleashing the devil's son-in-law.
In March, Williams told the parole board he used to feel nothing for his victims. But after he found God about a decade ago, he now calls himself the devil's ex-son-in-law. He claims he isn't the same person as the one holding that gun. He's now ordained minister Kenneth Williams.
Meeting my maker isn't something I have to fear or dread. I look forward to it.
After 17 years on death row, he awaits his fate in the same prison from which he escaped, a place right down the road from the Bourne family's home.
I have come to the place in my life where I've forgiven him for what he did, but I will not forget.
Wow, and you just heard about that forgiveness there. Each family of the victims in these cases, they each have their own perspective on Kenneth Williams, how they feel about him, whether or not they forgive him or not. We've seen a lot of stories emerge in this week, and one of Kenneth Williams' families saying they do forgive him. That's Michael Greenwood's family. You probably heard that name a lot through all of this. They wanted the governor to actually spare Williams' life. They wrote a letter, but they didn't stop there. They also learned about family members whom Williams had never met until yesterday.
An unlikely pair.
I'm here to support you guys.
Brought together through love, but connected by tragedy.
The man that committed those murders.
Kayla Greenwood's dad, Michael Greenwood, was killed by Kenneth Williams in Missouri in 1999. Jasmine Johnson is Williams' daughter.
When I read Jasmine's story about not being able to see her dad for 17 years, wishing that her dad could meet her daughter, I felt the exact same way, and I immediately was like, we need to give that to her.
Kayla and her family quickly got in contact with Jasmine, who lives out of state. The Greenwoods bought a plane ticket to Little Rock for Jasmine and her 3-year-old and brought them to the Cummins unit Wednesday.
You know, they did all this just for me and my daughter to come and see my dad, considering, you know, the things that he's done to the family.
Jasmine got to see her dad for the first time in 18 years.
It was a new experience for me as well.
She got to introduce her daughter to Williams, too.
He just said he just couldn't believe it, because the last time he seen me, I was her age.
She says they said their final goodbyes.
And he said tomorrow, like, no matter what happens, he will at least be more at peace now, knowing that he was able to see me and my daughter, and as well as everything the Greenwood family has done for him.
Kayla misses her father every day, but making this connection possible helps her find closure.
For me, I just put myself in her shoes, and it just feels like I would be able to see my dad, and I would be able to see my dad meet my children.
With the planned execution for Williams Thursday, the family say they will forever be connected through forgiveness and love.
And I have a lifelong bond with her, and we're family now. Yeah. There's nothing that can change that.
Pretty remarkable story there when you take in and look at the big picture. But of course, Governor Asa Hutchinson did respond to Greenwood family's letter that was sent to them in a statement today saying, in part, I have reviewed the letter from the Greenwood family, and I appreciate the genuine spirit of forgiveness and compassion demonstrated by Ms. Greenwood. Her letter certainly has impact. However, my responsibility is to look at the totality of the case, including the view of all the victims and the interest of justice. Kenneth Williams murdered multiple people, and actions have consequences.
And it's interesting, one of the daughters of Greenwood who wrote that letter would have gone to meet Williams had ADC allowed it. I mean, she was prepared to meet him. That did not happen yesterday, but she did clear the path so that he could see his daughter and meet his granddaughter for the first time.
And just so you know, in case, because there are a lot of moving parts as it pertains to Williams' criminal background, Michael Greenwood was driving a water truck in Missouri, and when Williams had killed Cecil Boren at just a few miles away from the Cummins unit, he stole his car and then headed to Missouri. Police eventually caught up with him in Missouri, and it was during a high-speed chase that Kenneth Williams lost control and went head-on into a truck that was being driven by Michael Greenwood, thus costing him his life.
Yeah, and I was even learning that Michael Greenwood's wife was pregnant at the time with twins.
Oh.
So those children, I mean, he already had a child that was about 3 at the time. So that's who the daughter that you're hearing from in that letter that she wrote to the governor. So a lot of families impacted by this. It's emotional for all the families. That's kind of what we've seen this week.
Yeah, and we the only official word that we have in terms of the family members of the victims wanting to witness the execution that is in the process of being done is Cecil Boren's wife, Jeannie, and she was the one who said, you know, hey, this guy committed a horrible crime. It impacted me directly. A jury found him guilty, sentenced him to death, and you know, it has to be carried out.
Yeah, Dominique Hurd, her family is out of state, I believe. They're not going to be there tonight. Our Charmaine Nero was able to FaceTime with Dominique's mother today, and she told her that she's had peace for years, but she's relieved that this will bring some closure to the families. So again, all of the families have a different perspective on this because you know, the crimes may be similar, but they're dealing with it in their own ways. And but this is especially a meaningful night for the family of Cecil Boren. They live just a couple of miles down the road. But there you're seeing pictures of Dominique. She went by the name Nikki. She was a student at UAPB.
Studying to become a doctor, a cheerleader.
Her mentors have talked about what they remember from that time, and yeah, just a remarkable young lady, still remembered today.
Yeah, and she was with one of her friends when they somehow encountered Kenneth Williams, who was 19 years old, and he kidnapped them more or less at gunpoint, and they went around to ATMs, and he made them withdraw some money, and then he shot them both. Of course, Nikki unfortunately did not make it. Her friend at the time was able to get away and survive, but that's what started this whole process going, and he was sentenced to life in prison at that particular moment
for a crime that really had no other motive than money. It was random.
That was it.
And so it's unbelievable. And Jesse and Bob, you guys are outside. Have you heard anything at this point?
We're actually just waiting for some kind of activity and you know, some kind of word that things are underway, or at least things are wrapping up. But you know, when you get back to what you guys are talking about, when you talk about the loss of life, the victims' families, and where we are now and why we're now, and there's a man in a room back there whose life is about to end. You think about it, and one word just came to my mind. It was just waste. What a waste. You know, it's just the actions of one person for whatever reason, just an absolute waste.
Exactly. Waste of a life, waste of many lives. It just creates a domino effect that really time can try to heal, but I mean, it'll affect a family for forever. I mean, grandchildren down the line will always hear about what happened to their grandparent. It's just a domino effect. And then we're here, an execution is being carried out, and you have to wonder too, moving forward, is capital punishment any kind of a deterrent for things like this? That's a debate that will go on
till the end of time.
Exactly. And I think it's important now to clarify really quick, too, earlier when I was saying that Oklahoma now turns the speakers on throughout the entire lethal injection. I misspoke on that. Since the 2014 botched execution, they have since changed their protocol to be like Arkansas's, where the microphone's shut off for the witnesses who are watching it after the inmate gives his or her last words.
It'd be interesting
so that
to
did
hear
change.
the debate on that. You know, why that happened, and if, you know, how well that's sitting, at least with media witnesses.
Exactly.
But we're sitting here now, guys. We're waiting right now, and I think we haven't got any specific word that things are underway. Generally, we don't. I mean, we get word that things aren't underway, but we don't get word that things are underway. And part of that is, too, you have to understand that the Arkansas Department of Correction, they're in the middle of possibly one of the most important jobs, one of the most important undertakings that happens at a prison, and that's carrying out execution. Also, when we refer to the fact that it's all quiet here and nothing's happening, that's a good thing. That means everything is working the way it's supposed to at a prison. And covering these in the past, too, and I've spoken to ADC employees, they telegraph to you that how they know, I really don't know, but the population is aware of what's happening. They know what's happening today, and they know what's happening at this hour. I'm not sure where they may all be, but and you have to think that there's about 1,800 folks in the population here. So ADC has got to move very carefully and cautiously and respectfully with this specific task to continue their mission here. Got some updates?
Yes, important one actually. So Mitch McCoy inside the media room just say that the phone rang, which means that Solomon just got his update.
Getting some information, yeah. So
that means we'll have something here in a little.
In just a few minutes. So it's important to know too that, as mentioned, that this is their course of information. They get information from the folks at the death chamber, then it goes to the Solomon, who's the spokesperson, and then he passes it along to us. They don't have a bunch of people here who work for the Arkansas Department of Correction updating us and running around back and forth.
Right.
They're very methodical and they're very pointed because of the seriousness of this task at hand. So the information comes from one person to the other, and it's also interesting to point out that that's a hardline telephone.
Definitely.
It's not a cell phone, so there can't be any miscommunication. The phone is dialed and it goes directly to him, and then from him it's directly to us.
And we asked him even how long that phone's been there, and he
Forever.
says
I remember sitting there 20 years ago staring at that phone.
See, there you go.
It's been there for a while, and it's going to be there for a little while longer, I imagine. And it all depends on how we move forward with executions in the state of Arkansas. So now we sit here. We know the phone just rang a short time ago. Just exactly what kind of conversation we will know within, I guess, a couple of seconds here, because Mitch is pretty good getting us updates on Twitter. And that point, then we wait for, if the execution has been carried out, we wait for the witnesses to return, and then they go in the room. Then when you guys come back, I notice you take a little while before you guys step up to the podium that's in there.
Yes.
And then address everyone.
Like we've been talking about, we each kind of have to make sure that we all saw generally the same things at the same time to make sure none of us missed anything, because we usually try to designate one person to talk, just so there's not kind of a mess of information being spurted out. We try to make it a little organized just so everybody can know exactly what happened from point A to point Z. So we try to discuss it a little bit with each other to make it clean for the rest of the media, waiting to give all of the information to all of you back at home, just to make sure that it's right and concise and kind of go from there.
Well, good. And then there's no one's conflicting on what they may have seen.
Exactly.
If that's the case, well, then there's something that has to be closer looked at. I think we've got...
Yeah, just breaking news right now. Kenneth Williams has been executed.
Time of death, 11:05.
Just 4 minutes ago.
So Kenneth Williams, now the fourth person to be put to death in the state of Arkansas in the last 7 days.
And we did the math, and it actually makes him, since 1913, since Arkansas has done executions since they started collecting that data, he's the 200th inmate to be executed since 1913.
We understand the process began at 10:52. Excuse me, so then that would make it about a 12-minute process from the administration of midazolam to then the other drugs.
Exactly, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from those media witnesses soon. Probably be seeing their van come by here shortly, just to let you know how that whole process works. So once the coroner does say the time of death at 11:05, Wendy Kelly, the ADC director, she comes into the death chamber while everyone is still in there, and she gives the two times, the time that the first drug was administered, the time of death, to show exactly how long it took. And then she also reads the court order reminding us of the man or woman sentenced to begin with, and then the curtains close, which is kind of symbolic.
And then it's back here. One thing too, point out that shortly after that.
We've been talking for a long time.
We've been talking for a while. But shortly after that too, then they have to continue the process. And will the body go then to the state crime lab for an autopsy?
That's the information that I have been given, and actually the media witnesses and the rest of the witnesses are taken out before they even remove the body, just so we wouldn't see anything involving that whatsoever too. But yeah, I think it goes to that.
And that's the protocol. Then there's an autopsy to determine that, I guess, the reaction of the drugs in this individual. And move forward with that.
Yeah, and then one of our reporters, Isabella Moeller, she actually did an awesome story, I think yesterday, with the crime lab. Even though there was conflicting views about were some of these botched, were they not, she said, I thought that was pretty telling. She said, I talked to the one man in the state who can answer that question since he's the one doing the autopsies, and he said nothing was botched.
And then that's if he gives that call, it's the good word. So now we sit and wait for the media witnesses to
Okay, we're just getting in some new information right now. You want to take that, Bob?
A witness just mentioned that Williams was shaking. No further information given. So the media witnesses will clear that up. And this is kind of a situation too. We're at this point in time where information like this trickles in, and it could mean a whole host of things to a whole host of people.
Exactly.
So until the entire picture, until all the pieces of the puzzle are actually put together, and then we'll be able to paint the picture of what kind of an execution this was, how it went down. Was there any concern for administering the drugs or not?
Because the body shaking could be the equivalent of gasping for breath.
Right.
Who saw it one way, but who saw it another way. So we'll have to hear about that.
And there are a number, I'm not a doctor by any chance, but there are a number of other, involuntary muscle movements and things like that that could fall into place. So before we throw all this information out there that may mean absolutely nothing, we're just kind of sitting and waiting.
Exactly. The situation is very fluid, just like it always has been.
So right now we're at that point though where it's moving very slowly, but yet it still is moving. But we do know that Kenneth Williams, the 4th person executed in the state of Arkansas in 7 days, and the 200th executed since I guess Arkansas 1913, since we've been on record for executions.
Yeah, quite a historic day.
So there we are, guys. At this point, this will be the last execution also, because midazolam expires. That drug expires in a couple of days. And when will they resume? That's anybody's guess, because now the debate and discussion will begin on just exactly how they'll be carried out and with what.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And obviously there was a lot of concern heading into these scheduled executions, originally 8 and 11 days, but it's just, as Bob just mentioned, it's been 4 in the past 7 days. But a lot of concern and focus, not just across the nation, but across the globe, as to whether or not we were doing too many executions too fast under false pretenses with this drug expiring. But, and this is just, looking at the big picture here of the 4 inmates who have been scheduled, it appears, as we take a look at them, that these executions went without any major problems. I'm sure they'll be looked at even more closely. But Liddell Lee, who was the first to be executed, that execution took 11 minutes. Then on April 24th, Jack Jones was executed. His execution took 14 minutes. There was a 3-hour delay for Marcel Williams, and his execution lasted 17 minutes. And then, as we just heard tonight, Kenneth Williams, his execution began at 10:52, and the time of death was announced at 11:05. So 13 minutes passed for his execution. So all them happening within what many experts have said is a normal execution, between the windows of anywhere from 8 minutes to 15 minutes. And all 4 of those executions fell into what experts refer to as kind of like a safe zone, if you will, for scheduled execution.
Right, and that is the average, that's
Yes.
the average time that it takes for this process to happen. And one thing we haven't heard yet tonight are what his final words were. We knew that there would be some kind of apology to the family. That's what he's alluded to in a letter, at least this week. So that's something that we're waiting to learn, which we will learn here in the next few minutes shortly once that press conference starts. We also have our state leaders who are weighing in on this. They have been working tirelessly to carry out these death sentences. We want to show you one now from Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. Tonight, the rule of the law was upheld as the family of Cecil Boren saw justice done. On October 3rd, 1999, Cecil was simply going about his daily life at his home near the Cummins prison unit when he was shot and killed by an escapee who was serving life imprisonment without parole for capital murder. I pray this lawful execution will bring closure and peace to the Boren family. And you can imagine this is also probably bringing some relief to the other families involved, at least one other family, the family of Dominique Hurd, who they were not there to witness tonight's execution.
Yeah, a range of emotions for a number of different people. Of course, as Ashley just mentioned, of course, the victims' family members, obviously, for them, a sense of closure in some respects, depending on how they react to it, but also for the state of Arkansas. State officials who were in the spotlight because of the scheduled 8 executions in 11 days. Then you think about the staff at the Arkansas Department of Correction. A lot of eyes on them, a lot of pressure on them to make sure that these executions went smoothly and without any major complications. But it's throw in the state of Arkansas, and yet no word on how they will be executed or if and when, because we're still waiting for a direction as to how they're going to be executed. Media witnesses just getting out of the van there.
That's right. About 12 minutes since Kenneth Williams' time of death, they are arriving back at the media center. They will be going inside and getting ready for a press conference and to let us know exactly what they saw during that time. The whole process from when we received word that the Supreme Court had denied his motion for a stay of execution, from that point to Kenneth Williams' time of death, it was all less than an hour, just under an hour from start to finish. So we're also hearing from the governor, too.
Yeah, you just issued this statement, and I'm quoting the governor here, saying, "The long path of justice ended tonight, and Arkansans can reflect on the last 2 weeks with confidence that our system of laws in this state has worked. Carrying out the penalty of the jury in the Kenneth Williams case was necessary. There has never been a question of guilt. In 1999, Williams was serving a life sentence for the murder of 19-year-old Nikki Hurd when he escaped and proceeded to kill again 57-year-old Cecil Boren, a grandfather and husband to Jeannie, and a Missouri man, 24-year-old Michael Greenwood. Williams would later confess to the unsolved murder of 36-year-old Gerald Jenkins, a father and stepfather. In the last 7 days, after decades of waiting, the families of Deborah Reese, Christine Lewis, Mary Phillips, Lorraine Ann Barrett, Stacy Erickson, Nikki Hurd, Jarrell Jenkins, and Cecil Boren were finally provided the justice they were promised, and they also saw that our system of laws have meaning." That statement coming from the governor.
And speaking of the guilt, which he said there was no question about, take a look here. We're just now hearing Williams' last words, started with an apology to the family. "I extend my sincerest apologies to the families I've senselessly wronged and deprived of their loved ones." So very powerful words from both the governor and also this inmate, Kenneth Williams. We're waiting now just to hear from the witnesses who were there to watch the sentence be carried out.
And as they were walking in, we saw leading the way Kelly Kissel, who has a vast and extensive knowledge of how executions are carried out. He's witnessed and even overseen dozens of them, a lot of them in other states, in addition to the state of Arkansas. He was followed by our very own Donna Terrell. And then the other reporter, I'm not familiar with his name, but I believe he was a reporter for
Pine Bluff Commercial.
Pine Bluff Commercial. And as we've mentioned before, the three of them have gotten together, and this is according to Jesse Tenure, who went through Knowles Atkinson. That's the reporter for the Pine Bluff Commercial there. But they're getting their notes together, and then one of them most likely will stand up at the podium and present their findings, if you will, as to how this procedure went from start to finish.
We don't expect to hear from Cecil Bourne's family tonight. That's something we're going to respect. Of course, I think they have given us their side, and they've been on this and talked about how much he meant to the family, and they've talked a lot about forgiveness, but how they cannot forget. They asked for this. They asked for this punishment because of the pain that he caused. Kenneth Williams caused his family. So, yeah, we want to take a look at what we're seeing now on Twitter. You're probably following along.
Yeah, and this is according to the Arkansas Department of Correction, saying and telling our Mitch McCoy that Kenneth Williams was, was shaking for about 10 seconds, 3 minutes after lethal injection process began. That's when the midazolam, which is a sedative, would have been administered. And as Bob Clausen mentioned, even Jesse, along with us, we're not going to read anything into that because that could be something that's normal. I mean, we're not medical experts, so it's not for us to make any certain assumptions or judgment on, but it was noticed, it was documented, and it was passed along. So we'll have to see what the media witnesses think about that. And
it's interesting they're putting that out there and being transparent before they even get to the get to the podium to let us know.
Yeah, very interesting.
What were you saying, Mark?
That is true, yes.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting information that came from the Death Penalty Information Center.
Yeah.
Because we hear a lot about, well, we did know that it was going to be a record for a time period, but when you look at the big picture and what has been carried out here in Arkansas, the 4 death row inmates who have been sentenced and their sentences have been carried out. It's not quite a record.
Yeah, there was.
You look at this.
There was a lot of conversation as to, oh my gosh, is this going to be a record for the state of Arkansas? No, 4 executions is not a record. Texas, by the way, has the record for carrying out 5 executions in a week, and as we just mentioned, that is according to a reliable source there. So. Arkansas does not have a record. We don't want to brag about that. That's for sure. No. But we do have another tweet coming in from Mitch McCoy, and this again is coming from the Arkansas Department of Correction.
You're right. During the last words, Williams ended by speaking in tongues, signed a second statement, Arkansas death row preacher. So something that
don't know how to interpret
we'll
that
never
one.
Understand that, I guess.
Exactly.
But if, that's something we'll probably learn more about from the people who were in the room as they get up to the podium and try to make sense of what he was trying to convey.
Yeah, I am still very interested to see what happens in the coming days and weeks, not only with state officials, but obviously with legislators, to where we can all just kind of sit down, take a big, deep breath, and look at the big picture and see if what we've learned from this situation and whether things can be improved or need to be changed, or if laws need to be rewritten. It's going to be interesting to see how the state of Arkansas responds to this, seeing we haven't done it in so many years.
And the governor is actually going to respond to this tomorrow, among other things. There's a special session next week, but this is one of the things he will be addressing tomorrow for the first time. This will be the first time we've heard from him in quite a while since this whole process began last week. So he is planning to talk tomorrow. I'm sure there will be some questions about that moving forward, a lot of questions.
Yeah, they went in knowing that of the 8 scheduled executions, that there was a very good chance that obviously not all of them would be carried out. That was certainly the case. 4 of them granted stays for various reasons, and then 4 of the executions were definitely were carried out. And the state, we'll have to see how they interpret that and how they feel about that. I know they were following what juries recommended for these individuals, but there is a process to all of this, as we have educated you on a number of appeals, and you wonder if that process is going to be reviewed at some point, probably way down the road, but certainly not tomorrow or in the coming days.
Right, and this is the time where we could expect to see Kenneth Williams' body leave the prison grounds. Time of death again on your screen at 11:05. That was about 20 minutes ago. So we have our camera focused right there on the building where that press conference is going to be held in just a few minutes. And
yeah, and I'm sorry,
that the hearse has already left. All right, so there you go.
There you go.
So Kenneth Williams' body has left.
And will be taken to the coroner for an autopsy to be conducted, and we'll have to wait and see what the coroner says in reference to this execution. But the previous executions, according to the coroner, no problem.
That's right.
No problems. Those are his words. So we are waiting for our very own Donna Terrell to come out to give us her account of what she witnessed. But right now they are inside the media room. By now, if you've been following these executions, you kind of are right along with us and know the procedures and know the process that is involved. It's a lengthy one, but there's media in there asking the media witnesses a number of questions, and I'm sure they will be doing some comparison purposes as we look at Stephanie Sharp's posted tweet there of the hearse actually leaving the Cummins unit. So there's proof that Williams has been removed from the Cummins unit for the very last time. Certainly no escaping the unit this time around, obviously. But we are just waiting to hear from Donna Terrell and see how she perceived it. I'm not sure what she'll be saying or sharing, but I'm sure it'll be a detailed account.
Yeah, we will be hearing from her here shortly. And Bob is standing by along with Jesse. They've got their eyes fixed right there on the building, as do you all at home tonight. So a lot of you have been chiming in and following this story for more than a week, just like we have. So it's something that we're going to continue to follow and carry out until we hear from Donna, which should be here shortly.
Yeah, I know Bob and Jesse are standing by. Let's kind of check in with them. It's a similar and kind of eerie. There's Jesse as she moves in, and Bob, but kind of a similar and eerie feeling. But this one might be a little different, seeing it's the last scheduled execution for quite some time.
Well, it's one of those things. There is some finality to it on a number of different levels, and as you mentioned, moving forward from this point, there's probably going to be a lot of discussion, Kevin, on the process itself. And then you mentioned at the legislature there'll be talk, and the people that will want to hear from, mainly, I guess, who have really their finger on the pulse of all this, the prosecutors, because the prosecutors are the ones out there who are faced with prosecuting these people who are responsible for taking lives. And sometimes you talk to a prosecutor and you ask them, how come you're not going for the death penalty in a case like this? And they say, because I probably couldn't convict on death penalty. I won't get a death penalty conviction. So they'll go for life without parole, because they tend to say in some portions of the state, or even as the country moves in one direction or another, a jury just won't sentence someone to death. And they find that they're better off just going for life without parole, unless it is an extraordinary case. And also, though, there's a big argument too on the length of time people sit on death row, because the saying is, when the elected prosecuting attorney signed the letter last week leading up to one of the executions, was that it's not the severity of the punishment, it's the swiftness with which it is dealt. If someone's looking forward, they're going to get convicted, and realistically they've got 20 years to sit on death row. Well, what kind of a deterrent is that?
Exactly.
So there's a lot to be talked about moving forward.
And we actually just got word that media news conference would be starting here shortly, and so hopefully we'll have more to bring you on that. I think something interesting too to mention is that in all these clemency hearings that I've sat in on, we've talked a lot about the victims' families and then what the inmates and their lawyers have said. But I think what's interesting to point out too is that at the victims' side, the prosecutors have spoken a lot, and they went into that. They went into, how do I hand down a death sentence over life without? And they said that it is something that weighs on them a lot, and it's not something that they assign regularly by any means.
No, and I think a lot of them too, and they'll bring the family in, and they discuss that moving forward. And sometimes the family may say, no, we're not comfortable doing that, even though the prosecutor may say, well, we've got someone who certainly fits the bill for a death sentence. And a lot of states are moving in one direction or the other, or they wind up with death rows that wind up actually being nothing short of a prison. just holding people for an indefinite amount of time. And that's one of those things where the justice system, whether you certainly can't fault the justice system for taking its time reviewing these cases, allowing people to appeal, and looking at the minutia up until the last minute. We've seen in every one of these executions that they've taken a very close look on so many different things. That's what they're supposed to do, and that's what everyone wants them to do. Rush to judgment is possibly the worst thing you could do, because we've seen situations where there has been rush to judgment and the judgment has been wrong or ill-timed or ill-conceived and pointed the wrong direction. So this is a discussion that we're having right now that lawmakers, prosecutors, police officers, and correction officials have all the time.
Exactly.
And if there was any easy way to wrap it all up in a special session or at the Supreme Court or in Congress, it would have been done, one would think.
Yeah, it's just a very difficult issue. And kind of going back to the victims' families a little bit too, I mean, they say that, in some cases that they would have been okay with life without parole, but that wasn't the original sentence. So that's why they've been waiting all this time for a death sentence, because that's what it was to begin with. And at the same time, you have to think about the inmates. I mean, I found out that their cells on death row are no bigger than a parking space. They're in there for 23 hours. They get let out for one, and even then it's been described to me as like a little dog pen where they get to just like walk around. And so they said as far as physical activity goes, that's out the window. There's just not a whole lot for them to do. So what kind of a life has it been for them the past 20 plus years too?
So when they look at the option or the alternative, you have to wonder what that conversation is inside a person's head.
Exactly.
Be that as it may, the conversation that we're all waiting to hear more on is the one that's happening right now inside the media room, as I guess one of the elected witnesses addressing the media. And there's a lot of folks in there from whether they be print or electronic media, and they all want to find out just exactly what happened and get the story out there. Another thing too that's interesting is that there's still international media here. BBC has been here basically covering us, cover this. So this is going to be a story, an international story for some time. The penal system in the United States always is. It fascinates people around the world for both good and bad reasons. But it's going to be interesting to see what the national press says tomorrow and what international folks take on this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, after I witnessed the Marcel Williams execution, I talked to people from London, I talked to people from New Zealand, and the main question that they had was just, what was it like? They weren't trying to say, was it botched? They weren't trying to get any sort of scoop or any kind of juicy story. I think they're just so interested in the fact that we do this, because I think I looked it up in Europe in general. They haven't had an execution at all since like the 70s or 60s, and so they're just kind of baffled by all of this. And so the main question was just what was it like sitting in there watching a man die? Right,
being escorted in there. And then you think too, with some of the things that we have seen, the horrendous things we've seen by terror groups that are out there, and that you'd think that this would be on the low end of the curve on when it comes to ending someone's life. But anyway, it's a discussion that really brings it home, and it's serious business, and it's the serious business that the justice system carries out, the most serious.
Exactly, and I think it's garnering a lot of attention because it's planned out, and it's a sentence that needs to be carried out eventually. And like you said, it's taken a long time to do, but it's it's a process of putting someone to death. It's not. There's no question of it. It's just, when will it happen? And I think that's why they got so interested in it too, is that because the state is planning out someone's death.
And
down
then
to the minute.
and once the steps are in place, there's no backing up, unless of course the Supreme Court gets involved and decides we'll take a closer look at things, which we've seen happen, over the past week and a half. And it's for one of the condemned men, they're on the path to clemency, so that's that. The other ones may be back here in the future in some way, shape, or form. There again. So then, Kevin, bringing it full circle, we're back to that debate. When will this continue? At least executions in Arkansas, and how? So.
Exactly.
And that's an interesting point, as Ashley and I were talking about it, because we still have 30 30 inmates on death row as we speak. But How and if they will be executed is the big question mark that looms over the state of Arkansas right now, especially considering that the midazolam that we currently have expires at the end of this month. And then at what point and where do you find a replacement? And will any manufacturer want to sell that type of drug specifically for the sole purpose of killing someone?
Yeah,
and
it's going to make it a little bit trickier. The whole process is going to probably change.
Yeah,
from this point forward.
that's even with the Arkansas having a secrecy law in effect and in place, which prohibits the Arkansas Department of Correction from disclosing who the manufacturer is. We kind of went through that with several lawsuits here in the state of Arkansas leading up to these scheduled executions. It went back and forth, and how the state obtained these drugs, whether it was legal or whether manufacturers were quote unquote duped into selling the drugs for other purposes when in fact they were being bought for an execution. Is that how
donated? We've heard a lot of different
donated,
terms
exactly,
thrown around, and not sure how that all works, but
I mean, who knows where it's going to go after this point?
Yeah,
who knows?
You also wonder about the families. You mentioned the 30 death row inmates who are still awaiting their fate. What the families are thinking, that we've got 30 families who are also watching this unfold in Arkansas. 4 men that were killed by lethal injection this month. Does that give them hope, or does it just frustrate them even more to that they're still waiting? So the legal process will have to play out in those cases, and that could take, as we've learned, takes on average, more than a decade.
Yeah.
So
we're in a holding pattern once again. That seems to be a common phrase as we follow these executions, but Mitch McCoy doing his best job. He's inside the media room and where the news conference has begun, and just sending out this tweet saying Williams was speaking, and this is according to a media witness, was speaking in tongues, and execution began. At 10:55, Williams' body was lurching forward before consciousness check. Now at 10:55, we're told that the actual execution of him began at 10:52, and that roughly 3 minutes later, we've heard some discrepancies from media witnesses about his reaction. At that point in time, that's when the 2 doses of midazolam, which is a sedative and the controversial drug that has a lot of people talking, would have been being pumped into his body. But don't know if that was a direct result of the midazolam or if it was just something else. Not going to read into that. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but we'll wait to see what other media witnesses, how they perceived it, how they interpreted it.
It looks like they're describing it a little more in depth here. It was clear after his body was shaking, he was striving for breath, looked like chest was pumping. Mitch also was saying that a media witness was describing the shaking that we were referring to, those 10 seconds there, as if you were going down a bumpy road. And like you were, just believing there that this was the midazolam. So the first drug, that was the only drug that had been given at that point when they were seeing that reaction from Williams. Yeah,
and then they would have waited at least 5 minutes after the midazolam was issued to do what is called a consciousness test, which would involve making sure that, according to the deputy director or the executioner, that he was in fact unconscious before they moved forward. Mitch also saying that Williams was making several noises, the media witnesses describing them as coughing, compulsing, shaking, and jerking with sound. I mean, I'm curious.
But we couldn't hear.
That's what I'm curious about, how the media witness.
They'll be able to explain that a little bit
unless
better.
That was a very loud sound.
If they could hear it through the glass.
Yeah.
That is interesting, though, because we haven't, the media witnesses that have sat in on the 3 prior executions didn't, of course, report any sounds.
No, Mike was cut off.
They could see one of the inmates' lips moving. I believe that was Jack Jones. So they didn't know if he was, still trying to get some last words in.
We had heard through the governor's spokesperson that in Jack Jones's case, he was, after the mic was cut, he was actually making comments to the Arkansas Department of Correction the director, excuse me, Wendy Kelly, saying, "Wendy, you know how I feel about you."
Wow.
Whether or not that actually happened, I'm not exactly sure, but that was what the governor's spokesperson said at that particular moment. So, but it was not heard by the media witnesses.
And you can believe that they are getting a lot of questions once they go through this account, this minute-by-minute account. They're going to get a lot of questions. So it may be a little bit longer before we're able to actually talk to Donna, because they're going to have some questions.
Yeah, especially in light of the tweets that Mitch McCoy is sending out from the media room. I mean, we did not hear this type of account from any of the other inmates who were executed, Liddell Lee, Jack Jones. We did have some controversy over Marcel Williams, but nothing this descriptive as Mitch is sending out, and he's sitting in on this news conference. I mean, we're hearing words about Williams' body shaking as if you were going down a bumpy road. Then you hear the coughing, the compulsing, shaking, jerking with sound. We haven't heard anything that descriptive as it pertains to some of these previous executions.
Yeah, and you'll remember from the autopsies on the previous inmates, you know, the medical examiner was describing what he was seeing as symptoms of a drug overdose, which could have been the respiratory system shutting down, as if you were having some sort of drug overdose. So that was kind of the medical explanation for the reaction that we saw in, I guess it was Marcel Williams, the very last execution we had on Monday night. So, and we also want to point out, we haven't heard from any of the attorneys for Kenneth Williams at this point. Shortly after Jack Jones' execution, they had filed a brief of some sort, and we haven't heard anything yet. So we do know his body has already left the prison grounds. So
Mitch also just sending out that, according to a media witness, Williams had 15 rapid breaths, 5 slower breaths. All happened no longer than 20 seconds. Witness presser put on hold, family of Williams victim coming in.
So they are going to speak, it sounds like.
So the press conference has been put on hold as family of Kenneth Williams Williams victim coming forward.
Right.
I wonder if that could be Jeannie Boren coming in to share her thoughts about what she was able to witness.
Cecil's brother had been vocal in the clemency hearings, as was his daughter, so we're assuming it's one of the family members talking about what tonight means to them.
Yeah.
Their voices, you know, we don't hear it every single time we talk about this case, so that's something that we will, of course, stick around to bring to you tonight, because that's a very big part of this entire story that we've been following. So
yeah,
to get their reaction.
Still changing by the minute. You're getting more information as we speak, but you know, just monitoring the situation.
If you want to monitor it with us, we're on Twitter right now. Mitch McCoy is inside the room. He's tweeting right now. I actually have an alert set up, so anytime he tweets, I'm able to see it first. Yeah. So we'll pass it along, but if you want to follow along, if you're up with us at the almost midnight now, we know a lot of people are interested in exactly what unfolded tonight.
Yeah, let's check back in with Bob Clausen, Jesse Tenor outside. I know the news conference is underway, and then all of a sudden it was kind of brought to a halt, so the family's victims members could address the media, but.
We weren't expecting that.
Certainly didn't expect that, but it'd be interesting to hear what they have to say as well.
No, sure, and first thing you want to do is cater to them in every way, shape, form, given the fact everything they've been through. So, yeah, when they walked through the door, we saw some folks get out of a van here, and it looked like that may have been them. Once they step in, sure, let them address the microphone, say what they have to say, and then let them get on their way. So it'll be interesting to see what they have to say, and what if they have any thoughts and/or cares about the condemned man's actions prior to his death.
Yeah, or about the process in which he died, too, since that's what Mitch has been bringing us reports about.
Because we've been looking at those tweets also, and all pieces to this puzzle that'll be put together. I guess at this point they would have to be clinically in some way. At that point, we certainly can't ask Kenneth Williams what was happening.
Right.
But I think to it that the state would look at it as, well, the end result is the one achieved.
I think it'd be interesting too, since he apologized again to his victims' families. Just does Cecil Boren's family accept that, and will they accept his apology this time around, since it was his last?
A lot of things are unfolding just feet from where we're standing, but we just got to let the things play out the way they play out, and then we'll know a lot more once Donna gets a chance to come on out here, and we'll hear what she has to say about it. Also, like to Kelly Kissel was in there, and he is an astute observer of things of this nature, and it'd be interesting to see what he has to say. And I know when there was some talk about Marcel Williams heaving, he said, I wouldn't really say, his classification was completely different, saying no, they were deep breaths, and you could look at that both ways. So Kelly's take on things will be very interesting to hear too.
Most definitely. And when I was in the execution chamber with him, he was the one that made sure that each of us was watching the right things. He had been through this before, so he told us exactly what to look for. And so if you're going to trust any man with any person with what they saw that's a media witness or a civilian witness or anything, I would lay my money on him, because he's seen a lot and he knows what to look for. So
that's what we're waiting on now, guys. We're waiting for first-hand accounts of what happened, and also first-hand reaction from the family in there. It's you think about what Cecil Boren's widow has gone through, and it was a morning where she went to church, going about her business, and Mr. Boren was going about his business at home, and in an instant everything changed at the hands of Kenneth Williams, who was just left Cummins Prison Farm in a hearse. Sentence carried out for him.
And the governor's office has said in other press conferences that have happened with the other executions that, this is the first time that these families have been able to go to bed feeling like they have justice. But I wonder what they feel like when they wake up the next morning. Do they feel like a weight has been lifted off their shoulders? Do they feel like they can move on? Or do they feel like that was just another step that they've been waiting for, and it still doesn't bring their loved one back?
No, and that just, now this is a fifth life lost in this entire case from beginning to now the end. It's not going to go any farther than this, but what will ultimately live on now is the classification of just exactly how the lethal injection was carried out for Kenneth Williams, and we'll get all that taken care of. But it's so easy to try to read into the bits and pieces of information that we're getting. So you just got to kind of refrain from that and wait until everything is brought back.
It looks
together.
like we might have some.
I think that
updates.
Could be.
Oh,
family
that's
members.
his family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like, since I was in the clemency hearing, I can say this for sure. That was his wife and 2 daughters that I saw in the clemency hearing. Mitch was just able to tweet out something as well. Let me bring this up really quick. It was something about the daughter. Yeah, Cecil Boren's daughter watched from the execution chamber. They thanked Asa Hutchinson and Attorney General Leslie Rutledge for being professional and persistent. And let's see, the daughter says they're thankful they can drive by the prison knowing Williams is not here anymore, because, again, the family still only lives 4 miles away. Right. Mitch is also tweeting that the media witnesses are back up again. Witness says it appeared Williams had IVs in each arm, which is different, again, from Marcel Williams, since he had 2 in his right arm.
So it says, I guess, tomorrow will be a new day for Cecil Boren's family.
And I couldn't imagine what it would be like every single time you leave your house, leaving and coming back, if you go the certain way that you would pass the Cummins unit, to see it every single day. How do you get closure at all?
This is how, I guess. And that perspective, you think, well, you don't ever want to put yourself in anyone else's shoes in a situation like that, but you can't just forget. If someone's sent away, you just can't forget that or pretend that they're not there. They are, apparently, and this does give this family relief in some shape.
Yeah,
some
18 years in the making.
That's right. And Kevin, as you mentioned, there's still 29 inmates on death row. That means that there are at least 29, there are 29 families of victims out there waiting for their justice, waiting for their tomorrow, when they can realize that the person who did the unspeakable thing to their family is no longer of this world.
And we're getting some more information from Mitch McCoy right now from inside the media press conference, and he was saying that Williams' last statement did go on for about 2 to 3 minutes, which
and we'll be able to get further insight as to what happened and get Donna's reactions.
I just appreciate the update. We're also hearing from the New York Times. A reporter there sent out a tweet just a short time ago saying the victim's daughter thanks Arkansas prison system for, quote, its flawless carrying out of this matter. This coming from Alan Blinder with the New York Times. Flawless carrying out of this matter. Those were her words specifically. But as Jesse Tenor just noted, along with Bob, they have left, the family has left, and will no longer have to wake up each morning wondering about Kenneth Williams behind bars, because he's no longer behind bars and he's no longer with us.
Yeah, they probably have no reason now to ever step foot back on the grounds again. No more clemency hearings.
No.
This is where justice ends for them tonight.
Yeah.
Or begins, however you want to look at it.
And think about Jeannie Boren. I mean, lived not too far away from that prison, and how that all went down with her husband. I mean, Kenneth Williams somehow was able to escape from the Cummins unit by hiding in a hog slop, basically a trash can, and got out and then went up the street and just randomly encountered her husband, a retired warden, and then broke into the house, stole his guns, went outside, and killed him before jumping in
the
car
yard
and taking, right in the garden. But to know that the man who killed your husband is just 2 miles down the street.
I'm sure that's something that's always in the back of your mind when you live that close to a prison. But when it actually happens,
yeah,
that family. I mean, they've even gone on to say everything in that house is a reminder of Kenneth Williams. So we're also learning more about the process, exactly what happened in the execution chamber right now. This is coming out of the media witness press conference. They're describing the breathing as heavy breathing, gasping, labored breathing. He was clearly trying to draw air in. That's what one of the witnesses is telling the crowd right now.
Don't know how to interpret that.
We'll have to wait, and
not going to try by any stretch of the imagination. That's not my job, and I'm not.
And that's something they will be able to look at also in the autopsy. The state wants a detailed explanation of everything. They want to see the report on exactly what happened inside the body when the drugs were given, and so that's something that the chief medical examiner will be looking at.
I think it'll be interesting to compare the notes that were taken by the media witnesses, the three media witnesses that saw Kenneth Williams being executed, and then compare their notes to what will typically come out tomorrow from the Arkansas Department of Correction with their log and account and version of what they saw, and see if there's any noticeable discrepancies between the two accounts. And then obviously we'll have to wait for the medical examiner's assessment to determine whether he sees anything noticeable that would raise any red flags or concerns from him, and then just compare all three accounts and see what we come up with.
Within 10 minutes of his time of death, that was at 11:05, we were hearing from ADC about that shaking period, the 10 seconds of shaking. So this was something that we learned before we even heard from the witnesses. So it will be interesting to hear their tone in all this, because we're just reading it here on Twitter. So we don't know the urgency. Here we're getting more information. Kelly Kissel is saying this is the first execution he's witnessed where someone moved this much. So he has a very vast experience with executions. So that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, I think he has seen.
This isn't his first one.
I think he has seen 9 executions here in the state of Arkansas, but he's also overseen, meaning with the Associated Press and his crew, dozens of others in the state of Oklahoma. But this is the tweet that you just read, Ashley, again reiterating what Kelly Kissel with the Associated Press. This is the first execution he's witnessed where someone has moved this much. So don't know what to make of that. But
the process, start to finish,
still fell with
took 13 minutes.
Still fell within what many experts deem as an average execution in terms of the length.
And it doesn't sound like they had to do multiple consciousness checks more than than the standard.
Like they did with Marcel.
But we will, of course, learn more about that as well.
And one other interesting thing that has not surfaced, at least at this point in time, was whether or not there were any problems finding the veins of Kenneth Williams. We did not know about the IV line that
for Marcel.
For Marcel Williams, that his attorneys claim took 45 minutes to place. We did not find that out for a very long time after the execution. The only thing we heard from them was that he was gulping for air, but we're getting a much more detailed account about the situation involving Kenneth Williams.
Yeah, good point too. Kelly Kissel, who was, talking about never witnessing someone moving this much, he was actually in on Marcel Williams' execution on Monday night as well. He was able to compare tonight's to Monday nights, so he has that perspective.
That'll be interesting, yeah. And he's witnessed 10 executions, as Mitch just tweeted out here. A lot of questions that still need answers, and that's exactly why this is taking such a long period of time, because as soon as all of this is being disseminated to the media who did not witness, you can imagine the arms are going up and follow-up questions are being asked because they want clarification.
Yeah, and we are now 4 minutes away, less than 4 minutes away now to midnight. We are still waiting to hear some of that sound from the press conference. We're waiting to hear from the media witnesses. We're getting their statements via Twitter, but we are waiting to hear from them at the podium. As soon as we get that, we're going to bring it to you right here as soon as possible.
I know. I'm just making sure we're not missing anything here that is of urgency
But we did hear, we weren't expecting to hear from Cecil Bourne's family tonight. So they are feeling relief. They are thankful tonight that this was carried out, that they will no longer have to be just a couple of miles down the road from their father's killer.
Yeah, or as they said, I think it was a drive-by the Cummins unit, knowing that the person who killed their father is still behind bars, because that's obviously not the case now.
But yeah, the story now turns to exactly what unfolded, in this 10-second period. We don't really have an exact timeline of when this happened, of the shaking that they're describing, the movement. So that's something that our reporters are working to get more information from the reporters who witnessed tonight's execution.
I'd also be interested to know about the consciousness test. Based on what we've heard from media witnesses involving the last three executions that unfolded with Marcel Williams, Jack Jones, and Liddell Lee. The consciousness test involved the medical examiner, or not the medical examiner, excuse me, but the deputy director or the executioner walking over and flicking the inmates' eyelids to see if there's any reaction, pinching them to see if there's any response. But it'd be interesting to see what kind of consciousness test was done with Kenneth Williams, and if it was done before all of the shaking and breathing and so forth, or if it happened during, or there's just a lot of questions that need answers to determine how this execution went.
That's right. And Jessie would have some good insight into this because she was able to watch Monday night and watch very closely the movement, exactly, what happened with the breathing and exactly what we're seeing tonight. She has some perspective on. So I'm interested to hear what she's thinking as she's getting some of this information right now from the press conference.
Let's see if we can check back in with Jessie Tenor and Bob Clausen, maybe to get her perspective on all of this. I know she's following the tweets that Mitch McCoy has been sending up very closely. I'm not asking for your personal opinion here, obviously, Jessie, but it's certainly a different account of how this execution is unfolding compared to what you witnessed with Marcel Williams.
It is sounding like it, and I was just as I was telling Bob a little bit ago, you know, I trust Kelly Kissel because he's watched so many of these. And so for him to say that this is the most movement he's witnessed and compare it to Marcel Williams' execution on Monday that I was in with him, I think that is kind of telling, because as far as what I'm seeing from these tweets coming out of the media press conference, that's not really what I was seeing with Marcel. It looked like he just kind of went to sleep. There was some heavy breathing for a while, for sure. Definitely, I wouldn't have said any gasping happening for Marcel Williams, but that's different in this case, it sounds like.
And it's, you know, to define this at a point is extremely difficult, because you could say that this was was it a markedly different execution, or was it a markedly different reaction by a person to these drugs? There could be two completely different things.
And something important that Mitch just tweeted was our own Donna Terrell just said during the press conference that it appears something went wrong during the execution, and another witness says it appears his actions were involuntary. I know in the past in some other states, even some of the inmates have told their lawyers ahead of time that no matter how I feel, I'm going to scream, or things of that nature. This confirms, though, at least from a media witness's standpoint, that his actions were involuntary.
Right, and that, you know, there could be, you don't know what's in the mind of some folks, but there could be some end game theatrics.
Sure.
Or not, but like I was trying to say, that, you know, a different execution, or was it just a different reaction to the drugs?
Right.
And was it a painful reaction? Was it something that I don't want to throw out, you know, any kind of words that'll get stuck any place, but we'll have to wait and see exactly what'll happen. And that's, you know, when the medical examiner, who is one of the finest in this part of the country, takes a closer look at everything, I have a feeling he'll be able to discern just exactly what happened and why it happened, or if there's any cause at all. You know, if it appears that there's no reason for this to have happened, or everything looks exactly the same way it looks in all the other ones. So.
Yeah, exactly. And another tweet really quick from Mitch. Sorry, it looked like it disappeared, but it was saying that his fists, though, were not clenching, I think.
Well, that's
kind of telling.
That's telling. That'll be something too. The medical examiner will say, well, there's a different muscle group moving when they all should be moving together, or
and we just got that confirmed.
Move independently. So
and in Marcel Williams' case too, he was never clenching, and so that made us think that even though his chest was moving rapidly up and down, that's just the way that he was reacting to it. And some medical professionals have said in hearings and stuff that if you take a 400-pound man with diabetes and sleep apnea and all these other issues and just lay him down and try to put him to sleep, just even for a routine surgery or something like that, that's kind of the reaction he would have. And so I wonder if maybe there was something else going on with Williams that we didn't know about, some sort of medical history or something that maybe caused him to do that. But again, speculation, and we'll have to see exactly what the medical examiner says.
And there will be a breakdown, you know, of everything, because these executions have been watched so closely by so many people for so many different reasons. You can bet that everything will be broken down scientifically, you know, physiologically, the whole gamut, Kevin. I mean, everything's going to be looked at, and even, you know, now comes a point too. Witness statements are going to come into play, and they're going to want to be quantified, and what makes you think the way you think, and why did you say what you said. So a lot of things are going to come into play. This does appear to be a very animated execution compared to the last ones.
Right.
What's the reason for it? That's way outside my pay grade.
Same.
You know?
Not even about to answer that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear from Donna.
Yeah.
Hopefully she'll be out here in a little bit.
Hey, Bob and Jesse, I'm just curious. Why wouldn't the Arkansas Department of Correction actually record these executions for further analysis, not to be released to the public or to the media, but to back up any potential outrage, I guess, if you will?
You know, and I've asked that question in the past, Kevin, because there is a room where family members can watch the execution, and it's on a video monitor. from what I understand.
Right, you're right.
And you know, I said, well, naturally there's a recorder hooked up to that. They said, no, there isn't. There's absolutely no recording of this. And I think it's in an attempt to keep it from getting out. If you put anything on paper, anything on video, anywhere in a government agency, as we know, as reporters, we'll eventually get a hold of it. It'll eventually get out. So I think they just kind of just remove that factor and they just don't record them. I could be wrong, and maybe they are being recorded and we're just not told that they are. But I don't know of any case where anyone has said, well, let's review this on the recorded material that we have to show you that that's not the case.
Yeah, and I've sat in on some of these hearings and just other court cases in general, and I'm just kind of visualizing, you know, even if there is video and it's
Donna.
used in,
Donna just stepped
Donna's
out.
here.
Let's
Hi,
hear what
Donna.
Donna
Welcome.
has to say, Donna.
So there's been, Mitch just put out a tweet saying that you thought that something might have gone wrong. What were you seeing that led you to believe that?
Well, there was a lot of heavy chest pumping, a lot of heavy breathing, even after they turned off the microphones. You know, he gave his final statements. The last thing he said was in tongues, and then he said something else, and his voice began to trail off like he was falling asleep. And then, right after that, the chest started going up and down and up and down and up and down very rapidly at first, and it continued that way for, let me look at my notes to make sure I got it. And what I wrote down was that this started at 10:55. The chest just started pumping rapidly. There was a coughing sound. His mouth was closed, but it was like his breathing was labored. And that actually went on from about 10:55 until 10:59. That's when I wrote, stopped breathing, wasn't noticeable anymore. So, you know, I've never witnessed an execution before, but if it's supposed to happen where the person is put to sleep the way we've always described it, and then, you know, they add the paralytic drug, that didn't happen after the midazolam, that very first drug. There was just a lot of heavy chest pumping and sounds coming out, and the microphone was turned off and we could still hear it.
What was the conscious test? How did that play out? Did it seem?
Well, even while he was still making these sounds, the attendant who had a microphone on, he rubbed across his eyes, and it seems like he opened the eyelids and rubbed across the eyes to, you know, do the whole consciousness test. But the heavy breathing continued for a while, even after that first consciousness test. Now, was he given another dose of the midazolam? I've always been told that could potentially happen. There's no way of really knowing that because, Jesse, you've been in there before. You don't really see when the drugs are going through the tube and into the arm.
Right. One question, though, in Marcel Williams' case, we were able to kind of see the attendant with the headset kind of do a second round of consciousness checks that weren't as thorough. Did you see that?
He did do that, but that actually didn't happen until 11:02 was when I saw the consciousness test again, and you know, time of death was 11:05. So, you know, the guy with the headphones, the attendant, as we refer to, he checked the eyes and the eyeballs. He pushed on his chest. He took off his headphones, and then he put his stethoscope on to check, you know, if there was a heartbeat.
Was there any
pulse.
change in the demeanor of the attendants as
No,
the heavy
and
breathing?
you know what? And that's a very good question because they were asking that very same thing in the news conference. There was no expression on his face at all. He just kept looking at Kenneth Williams. He just kept looking down at him because he was standing over him. Mm-hmm. And so there was no one else that we could see at that time to see how they were responding. So it was just that attendant there, and he was stoic.
Anything else that seemed to be glaringly different through your eyes from what you've heard about executions in the past, or how the last few have been carried out?
It was really just, I thought it was interesting when Kenneth Williams, he read from a statement. You may have already seen that statement. And then he went off script. He had words that he wanted to say which were not scripted. And give me a minute here just to get through my notes. He said that I've been transformed when I gave my life to Christ. I can't undo, but I ask for your forgiveness. And he said my last spoken words will be to God, spoken in tongues. And then he started speaking in tongues. And if anyone's ever heard how that sounds, then you know what I'm saying. I cannot describe that. But then at the end, as he was speaking in tongues, he said, the words I speak will forever, and then his words start to trail off, and just it seemed like he was going to sleep at that point. And so you thought, at least I thought, okay, this is where he starts to go to sleep and he loses consciousness. And maybe during that time when the chest was moving up and down, maybe he was unconscious. Maybe that was just the way his body reacted to it. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. All I know is what I saw. So it was after that we started seeing the chest going up and down, and because of that, it was making his head move also. There was no expression, though, on his face. It didn't appear as though he was in pain. His hands were never clenched, but it wasn't what I expected to see in terms of a smooth execution.
And then Kelly Kissel was in the room with you. He was also in the room with me during the Marcel Williams execution. What was he saying during the press conference in comparison to the Kenneth Williams one and the Marcel Williams one?
He said, well, he did say to us before the news conference, he said he had never seen one like this before. And he has witnessed a total of 10 executions, to be exact. He said he's never witnessed one like this before.
What about the shaking? We heard that he was shaking as if going down a bumpy road was one.
Yeah, that's what, well, and I guess, when I say the chest was going up and down, it was causing his head to move. So going down a bumpy road, if you're in the car, your body is moving. It was kind of like that. And those were Kissel's words. I don't know that I would have used a bumpy road to describe that. What really I noticed more was just the chest. You could just see it just moving, and for such a long time, about 4 minutes total, at different rates of pace, if you will.
Changing gears rapidly, Cecil Warren's family then came in during the press conference, and what did you get seeing their reaction up close, seeing their faces and hearing their voices?
I will tell you what I found very interesting, because all the other executions that we've covered thus far, we were told that the family was isolated in a room where they were watching via closed circuit.
Right.
Not this time. There were about 7 people I counted, because as soon as it was over and the curtains were closed, they asked that the family leave. So the family was the first to leave the witness room, and I counted the number of people that left, and it was 7. I'm pretty sure it was 7. One of them was Cecil Boren's wife. She was wearing a mask. I understand she has cancer, so she was wearing a mask, and I recognized her from the story that Mitch McCoy did, and Mitch told me that she would be wearing a mask and she wanted to be in that room. Now, the daughter, Jody Efford, that was her father, Cecil Boren. She said the family was thankful, and she said no change in facial expression to show that he was in pain. And she said, and any amount of movement, meaning what I was describing to you, is far less than what he gave to his victims.
And I think what's kind of important to mention, too, is that Mitch McCoy is in the governor's press conference right now, and you might find this interesting as well. So the governor's spokesperson, J.R. Davis, he just said that the execution tonight went smoothly. Williams' actions were not unusual with midazolam.
And that very well could be. This is the first execution I've ever witnessed. It's just not the way it's been described. It's not the way what you witnessed, Jesse. It's not what we've been told from the other executions that have happened. There have been 4 now. This one was different. This one was definitely different. And maybe he's right about that.
And JR just said a review of execution was unlikely. We just heard that from our producer, from Mitch's tweets. So I guess they don't think a review of the execution from tonight is necessary.
If they don't think so, then.
Well, I will tell you, there were some people in the room that the three of us figured might have been the attorneys for Kenneth Williams. They didn't tell us that. As you know, you can't talk. You can't really say anything. We did see them after we left the room, and they were like, no comment, we have no comment, we have no comment. They didn't appear very happy. And I mean, that was crystal clear. That much was crystal clear. Were they the attorneys for Kenneth Williams? I don't know. But my guess is they were.
And if so, then it'll take about a day, and then we'll generally hear from them if they've got any response to this, and what, if any, avenue they'll take. I don't know what recourse that they would take, but it seems like this, like you mentioned, that this was different.
This was different.
Was it offline?
Was it
for lack of better terms?
abnormal? Was it? I
right.
mean, I can't answer that question. I can't tell you that it was. All I can tell you is what I observed was at times disturbing. And for me.
Well,
maybe not for someone else.
What you witness is an abnormal thing for a normal person to witness.
Well, you make a very good point. You're absolutely right about that.
But I know, and then we're gonna, in the coming days, we're gonna hear more about what you saw in there and your take on all that. And no doubt we're gonna hear from the medical examiner. We'll hear from attorneys in the Department of Correction. But this is now the fourth execution in 7 days in the state of Arkansas.
And this is the last one. For now,
right.
until they announce there are more.
And how they'll be carried out.
Yeah.
Because the next few days that drug midazolam expires, and all executions will be on hold until we figure out how to move forward.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, thanks so much, Donna, for sharing your experience. We really appreciate it. And we want to check in with Mitch McCoy because he just got back from the governor's press conference to just talk a tiny bit about exactly what he was told. And so, at first he was just saying right off the bat that there was honestly nothing that really went wrong. He said smoothly, right?
Yeah, he said that he appeared, or from what he's gathered, is that this execution went smoothly, that those are the effects from midazolam. Now, that was after Donna stepped out, it was actually, there was a point where it became very tense. There was a reporter that kept hassling him, saying, how do you know that this execution went smoothly? Because they're not recorded. We do know that the body will be sent to the state crime lab, and I think that we'll ultimately figure out then if something went wrong tonight. But a lot of the descriptions that Donna was using and some of these media witnesses are very different from what we've heard in the past 2 executions or 3 this week.
Because I did realize the chest compressions going up and down, but it just sounds like a little bit different. But did the governor's office didn't really say that there would be any sort of looking into this execution, did they?
He said that the governor's office will look into all of the executions that happen, and that's normal procedure. We do know that after every execution there is a debriefing. That was something that Wendy Kelly testified in federal court a couple weeks ago. He didn't use the word investigate, but he did say that the governor's office will be looking into and talking with everybody involved just to make sure that things did go smoothly tonight. And then, of course, maybe, once we hear from the state crime lab, we might have a better answer to what happened. But J.R. Davis did say these are the effects that we see from midazolam. It's wide known in the community. So right now, nothing to be alarmed about.
All right. Well, thanks for that update, Mitch. We appreciate it. Of course.
So it's been a very long couple of weeks in the state of Arkansas, originally set to execute a block of 8 condemned inmates. Then that wind up through the courts getting whittled down to where we are at 4.
And speaking of J.R. Davis, he's actually here with us right now. He can shed a little light about exactly what was said during the press conference. Yeah. So how do you think it went?
Well, I think, again, we've seen a consistent effort from ADC. They've been prepared. They continue to do exactly what they've been tasked to do. And so the governor's, very confident in Director Kelly and the process they have in place here. You guys saw the statement from the governor tonight. It's been a long 2 weeks, but in 7 days, several families after decades have received the justice they've been promised, and that's something that the governor means a lot to him. And he mentioned tonight too that the state of Arkansas, Arkansans, hopefully have a renewed faith in the judicial system, that it does work when a sentence is handed down, that it is eventually carried out. And so that was his message tonight.
Seemed to be some concern from what the witnesses saw in the death chamber, the reaction of Kenneth Williams to at least the initial drug or the secondary drug. Anything raising red flags for you guys at this point, or was there enough of a difference from the other executions that maybe you want to take a closer look at just exactly what played out, or compare it to others where midazolam has been used?
Well, I'll tell you, the governor always reviews it. ADC does a great job of that, and so we'll look into it just as we do everything else in every one of these executions. But I'll say this, it's important to note that it's not unusual, the reaction to midazolam. Kenneth Williams was unconscious at that time, and it is an involuntary muscular reaction to the midazolam. And so, again, with the testimony tonight that was inside the media center, and there was no testimony that anyone perceived him to be in pain. There was a reaction, but that's something we've seen before. Again, we're as far as what took place tonight with the ADC staff, they carried it out the way they should have, and the governor's confident in their ability to do that.
And remind our viewers at home, will they be able to hear from the governor at some point soon now that all of the executions that were scheduled have been carried out?
Yeah, and thanks for asking that. Number one, the governor, throughout this process, this is something that he has not taken lightly. He has pored over the transcripts. He wants to make sure that there's absolutely no reason for doubt in any of these cases. He's confident in that, but throughout he's wanted to make sure that he's concentrating on that and not the media side, although you guys have your job to do and you've done it well. Tomorrow he is holding media availability, and he'll talk about this. Obviously we have an upcoming session as well, so he will meet with media tomorrow and just kind of go through his thoughts in the process to from setting the executions to carrying forward the 8 out.
All right, Jared Davis, thanks
very
much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. While this may have been the final execution in the state of Arkansas for some time, this won't be the final discussion about it. There'll be a lot to talk about as far as execution moving forward and the process that's involved.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, but right now we can say that justice has been carried out tonight, at least for the families, and we're done.
And that's it. As mentioned, it's been it's been a long couple of weeks. As mentioned, a block of 8 inmates scheduled to be executed. Now it is down to 4 in 7 days. And we know that one night we had a double execution, and we know in other states they used to have double executions. They decided that they're only going to do one, because in Oklahoma they ran into a problem. So moving forward, a lot of questions, perhaps about tonight's execution, a lot of questions about executions in the state of Arkansas moving forward as a whole, guys. But from Cummins Prison, that's about it.
All right, Bob and Jesse, great job. We appreciate the updates. One interesting fact and note that J.R. Davis, the spokesperson for the governor, said while Bob and Jesse were interviewing them, is that at no point in time during the Q&A session with the media pool did any of them mention that it appeared that Kenneth Williams was in pain. Donna Terrell, as you heard, said in her eyes it appeared something went wrong, but at no point in time was the word pain used to describe what they were witnessing. And to me, that is a critical fact that stood out.
Yeah, the reactions may have, been a surprise, to her, because it was her first time to witness an execution. But the reactions were not surprising, at least to the governor, that they were to be expected. Involuntary muscle movement, things like that. So interesting to hear everyone's perception of exactly what happened and what it all means. We will kind of have to take it all in and process it in the next few days.
We did hear and have a final statement from Kenneth Williams. These were his final words before he went into speaking of tongue. He said, "I humbly extend my sincerest apologies to the families I senselessly wronged and deprived of their loved ones. The families of Dominique Hurd, Jarrell Jenkins, Cecil Boren, Michael Greenwood. I was more than wrong. The crimes I perpetrated against you all was senseless, extremely hurtful, and inexcusable. I humbly beg for your forgiveness and pray you find the peace, healing, and closure you all deserve. To Kayla Greenwood and the whole Greenwood family, the acts of grace, forgiveness, and mercy you demonstrated toward the person who had taken so much from you by bringing me in prison, my own baby grandchild, right before my scheduled execution. No rapist, murderer, terrorist, butcher, barbarian, not even Beelzebub himself could withstand such a blast of glorious light and continue to walk in darkness. Wow. Signed, Minister Kenneth D. Williams.
Powerful statement tonight as we close the chapter on Arkansas executions, at least for this month, and as we move forward, we will have to see what happens. But it has been a long road to this point. Long and exhausting, and at times painful for certain individuals, but we'll get more perspective in the coming days. Of course, the governor, as you heard, scheduled a meeting with the media tomorrow to give his version and account of how these executions went. We'll, of course, follow that for you on KARK as well as Fox 16. But that's it for now. 4 inmates executed, all because they're paying the price for the crimes that they committed. Mm-hmm. But and there they are: Liddell Lee, Jack Jones, Marcel Williams, and Kenneth Williams. That does it for us. We're signing off for now. We hope you have a great evening.